Hello and welcome to the West Asia Post. I am Redi Francis, bringing you a new episode of WION's weekly show, where we bring you all things new from perhaps the world's most volatile region. Hezbollah says it has found a new way to blind Israel and counter its high-tech surveillance. The Lebanese group also says it will abide by Hamas's decision about a permanent ceasefire in Gaza. Now, the Israeli authorities and Hamas both have agreed that none of them would govern Gaza after the war. And in Iran, a set of new challenges after the snap presidential polls. We will discuss all this, but first, let's take a look at the headlines. Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant calls for a state inquiry into failings around the October 7 Hamas attack. Asks committee to include his boss, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, in the probe. A court in the United Arab Emirates hands life sentences to 43 citizens for helping outlawed Muslim Brotherhood. Human rights groups call the mass trial unfair, ask court to overturn its order. Turkey launches first domestically produced communications satellite, Turksat 6A, into orbit. Ankara says it will widen its satellite coverage for television broadcast needs. Iraq exhibits several ancient artifacts returned by the United States and other countries long after they were smuggled out after the 2003 U.S. invasion. All eyes and hopes are on a renewed round of talks to attain a permanent ceasefire in Gaza. Israeli authorities and Hamas say that both have agreed that neither side will rule Gaza after the war. On the other side, a British medical journal said that over 180,000 Palestinians have been killed. And not only in Gaza, in the West Bank, the Israeli atrocities continue to mount. Take a look.
The death toll continues to mount in the war in Gaza. In a shocking revelation by Lancet, one of the world's oldest medical journal, the lives lost in the war could be 3 to 15 times more than what is being reported. That could mean over 180,000 fatalities, totaling 7 to 9% of Gaza's total population. Around 60 bodies were found under the rubble of a Gaza City neighborhood after IDF operations. The Israeli army is ordering Palestinians to evacuate southern Gaza, warning the area will soon become a combat zone.
كتير سيء والوضع غير كتير سيء. لا حتى أنا ما كنتش بدي أطلع ولا إني حابة أجي على الجنين. بس خلص لا بدي أروح أحكام يعني طلعونا. لمونا وطلعونا.
In yet another horrifying video emerging from the ruins, an Israeli soldier vowed to crush Gaza, Lebanon and Iran.
יש לי מסר לכל החולדות שבעזה, לבנון, איראן. אל תתעסקו עם צה"ל. אתם תצאו מרוסקים.
A video broadcast by Al Jazeera shows the exact moment when an Israeli strike hit a school in Gaza's Khan Yunis. According to Palestinian officials, at least 29 children, including women and children, were killed in the strike, which took place as spectators crowded school grounds in Abbasan. In Gaza's south city of Rafah, fighting has picked up pace. Hamas's armed wing released a video of what it says shows Israeli targets. Israel's defense minister says 60% of Hamas's members have been killed or wounded in the Gaza Strip.
We have eliminated or wounded 60% of the Hamas terrorists. We have disbanded 24 battalions, or the vast majority of them. We have returned half of the hostages, and we are determined to retrieve the rest. and all of us, the security establishment, and myself heading it, are determined to achieve the goals of the war and complete them.
All eyes are now on the proposed truce deal to end the war in Gaza, on which the US is expressing cautious optimism. US is also resuming shipment of 2,000-pound bombs to Israel. These are the same munitions the Biden administration halted in May, due to the fears that they will be used to strike Gaza's Rafah city. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he's committed to the ceasefire framework if Israeli red lines are respected.
The way to release our hostages is to continue pressuring Hamas with all our might. The same is true of the Northern Front. Anyone who attacks us will be killed. We will bring about a fundamental change in the situation in the north and return the evacuees to their homes.
A Washington Post columnist says both Israel and Hamas have agreed that neither sides will rule Gaza during the second phase of a potential hostage deal. Violence and destruction have also increased in the West Bank. Arrests and Israeli military raids in the West Bank have intensified since the Gaza war broke out on October 7th last year. The Israeli Prison Authority has declared a state of emergency, effectively allowing conditions to worsen for inmates amid restrictions on jail visits. Palestinian photojournalist Muath Amarne was among the inmates detained in prison for 9 months. Amarne was never charged with an offense or put on trial. The US-based Committee to Protect Journalists has documented 51 Palestinian media workers detained in Gaza and the West Bank by Israeli authorities since the start of the war. Local media reported another tragic incident where a 23-year-old Christian woman, Lain Nasir, was taken from her home in West Bank. Nasir was reportedly arrested at gunpoint without charges and with a 4-month renewable period by an Israeli military court. Reports say Lain is one of the over 3,000 Palestinians held in Israeli prisons without any charges. Palestinian Foreign Ministry says over 9,600 Palestinians are currently in jail. According to the latest Palestinian Authority report, 18 prisoners have died in Israeli prisons since the 7th of October. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Hezbollah is very clear on their stance. They say they will abide by Hamas's rules. They will continue to back them in any decision about the ceasefire. And they will continue to defend Lebanon at any cost. Now, in the recent, they've been exchanging barbs with the Israelis in a key area, the Golan Heights. Watch.
Sending a big message to Israel and its allies, Hezbollah chief Syed Hassan Nasrallah says the Lebanese group does not fear an all-out war. He also backed Hamas in the event of a ceasefire with Israel, claiming that Hamas represents the entire axis of resistance in West Asia.
For us, Hamas is negotiating on its own behalf and on behalf of the Palestinian factions and also on behalf of the entire axis of resistance. What Hamas accepts, we all accept and we are all satisfied with.
On Tuesday, the Hezbollah group released a 10-minute video that showed 17 military sites in the Israeli-occupied Syrian Golan Heights. The Lebanese group called the video the second in a series that will be released. Hezbollah's media relations officer claimed the videos as evidence of the group's technological capabilities. Following the killing of its senior commander, the group is relying on coded messages, landline phones and pagers to counter Israeli surveillance. It is also using its own drones to study Israel's technology and defense capabilities. Hezbollah chief himself calls it the blinding Israel method. Both sides have been trading fire since the Israel-Hamas war started on October 7 last year. On the 8th of July, Hezbollah launched its largest air attack on Israeli intelligence base in the Golan Heights. The Lebanese movement said the drone attack is in response to the Israeli attack on Lebanon on 7th of July. On this day, Israel struck deeper into Lebanon. Israeli fire set a vehicle on fire in north of Baalbek, 100 kilometers from Lebanon's southern border with Israel. IDF said it killed a Hezbollah member of its air defense unit. The Israeli strike killed over 200 goats in a 200-year-old farm in Lebanon's Jazin.
I found that the Israeli airstrike hit the farm. And as you can see, we found the goats lying dead there. There were goats that had fled. We brought them back. And as you can see, the farm is destroyed and all our goats are dead.
Over the past weekend, the Israel-annexed Golan Heights has become the focus point for cross-border fire. In a video from Mount Hermon, the Israeli defense minister said the IDF will not end its campaign against Hezbollah.
I gave a clear directive to the forces stationed in the south and in the north. These are two separate arenas. Even if we reach agreement for a hostage deal, and I very much hope that we will be able to achieve it in the south, it does not bind us on what happens here, unless Hezbollah reaches a framework or agreement. Even if there is a ceasefire there in the south, here in the north, we will continue fighting and doing everything necessary to bring about the desired result.
Now let's shift our focus to Iraq, where a death sentence has been issued against the widow of the late ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. She seems to be a part of the ISIS, and also she detained the Yazidi woman in her house. Take a look.
On Wednesday, Baghdad's Supreme Court sentenced the widow of a late Islamic State leader to death. The court said she was complicit in the crimes of ISIS by siding with them. The court did not name the woman while accusing her of collaborating with ISIS. It said she used her home in Mosul to hold kidnapped Yazidi women taken captive by ISIS fighters in Sinjar in northern Iraq. The AFP news agency has identified the woman as Asma Muhammad, the wife of al-Baghdadi, the ISIS leader killed by the United States Special Forces in 2019. Al-Baghdadi was known to have 4 wives. A week after his death in 2019, Turkey said it detained one of his wives and other family members. Rising from obscurity, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi had led the ultra-hardline ISIS group and declared himself Caliph of all Muslims. From the year 2014 to 2017, the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant movement held vast sway over areas of Iraq and Syria, before US-led attacks disintegrated its control. In this reign of ISIS cruelty, the most affected were the Yazidis in Iraq and Syria. The Islamic State groups considered the Yazidi community infidels. When ISIS attacked the Sinjar district in Iraq in 2014, over 100,000 people fled and took refuge in Mount Sinjar. Thousands of the Yazidi men were executed. Many were forced to convert. The ISIS forced the Yazidi women into sexual slavery. A UN Commission report says the women and girls were handed out to ISIS fighters at pre-arranged locations in Iraq. As a form of resistance, the Yazidi women and girls scratched and bloodied themselves in an attempt to deface themselves and appear unattractive to potential buyers. According to the Refugees International and Voice of Yazidis, the minority group is struggling to recover from the trauma. 200,000 Yazidis are still displaced from their homes, and many are yet to get compensation of any sort.
When the Iranian Guardian Council announced the names of the presidential candidates, one name was surprising: Masoud Pezeshkian. Now, the reformist lawmaker has took more than 50% of the Iranian population's votes. And now he will be the next leader. In the next report, we tell you about the red lines that he will never cross. Take a look.
Masoud Pezeshkian, the sole moderate in a field of 4 candidates, won Friday's runoff presidential vote against former nuclear deal negotiator Saeed Jalili. He'll replace hardline President Ibrahim Raisi, who was killed in a helicopter crash in May. The 69-year-old heart surgeon's only previous experience in the government has been as a health minister about 2 decades ago. But the election of the relatively moderate president-elect has lifted hopes for young Iranians hoping for social reforms.
Congratulations to the knowledgeable and dear people of Iran on their victory. You've completed the work and taken a great step forward.
However, very few Iranians expect big policy changes. Experts say the leader will rubber stamp what the supreme leader of Iran, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, orders.
He knows, we know, he's always going to play second fiddle to the supreme leader. But this is the big question, the million-dollar question. What does the rest of the regime, including Khamenei and the Revolutionary Guards, think right now this country needs to do in terms of changes, domestic, foreign, to maintain political stability at a time where you have an 85-year-old supreme leader who might leave the stage and you don't want a crisis on your hands during that transition period?
Under Iran's dual system of clerical and republican rule, the president cannot signal any major policy shift on Iran's nuclear program or foreign policy, since Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei calls all the shots in top state matters. However, the president can influence the tone of the policy and be involved in selecting the successor of the 85-year-old Khamenei. That might not be an easy task. The Iranian supreme leader has already set out guidelines that he expects Masoud Pezeshkian to follow. The guidelines include continuing the pre-existing policies of Ibrahim Raisi. Masoud Pezeshkian has pledged to promote a pragmatic foreign policy. The reformist leader has called for constructive relations with Western countries to get Iran out of its isolation. Pezeshkian also favors reviving the 2015 nuclear deal between Iran and global powers. Analysts say Pezeshkian's victory is a setback for his rival, hardliner Saeed Jalili, who opposed any opening to the West and revival of the nuclear pact. Jalili supporters criticized a hardline watchdog body for allowing Pezeshkian to run for president. Insiders suggest Khamenei made the decision to secure a high turnout amid consistently low participation in elections since 2020. Pezeshkian hopes revived talks with the West will lead to a lifting of tough US sanctions, given the growing popular discontent over economic hardships in Iran. In fact, as per the latest reports, Iran's acting foreign minister Ali Bagheri Kani says Tehran is still conducting indirect nuclear talks with Washington via Oman. Ali Bagheri Kani's reported comments came after a White House official said US is not thinking to resume nuclear talks with Iran. The US says it is not expecting any policy changes from Iran.
Obviously, if the new president had the authority to make steps to curtail Iran's nuclear program, to stop funding terrorism, to stop destabilizing activities in the region, those would be steps that we would welcome. But needless to say, we don't have any expectation that that's what's likely to ensue.
While Pezeshkian did not promise radical reforms to Iran's theocratic method of government, he pledged to make some changes. The president-elect has promised to ease restrictions on Iran's mandatory headscarf law that sparked mass anti-government protests in 2022. As a lawmaker, Pezeshkian criticized the establishment over the death in custody of young Iranian woman Mahsa Amini.
It's been 40 years since we have tried to fix the issue of the hijab and the way that these men in government have acted. In all honesty, have we fixed it or made it worse?
The top authority in regional policy is not the president, but the guards who answer only to Khamenei. Pezeshkian is taking office at a time of escalating West Asia tensions over the Israel-Hamas war in Gaza and Hezbollah's standoff with Israel. Signaling no change in Iran's regional policies, Pezeshkian has reaffirmed Iran's anti-Israel stance and its support for resistance movements across the region. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
On a patch of sand in Gaza's Khan Yunis, these Palestinian girls showcase their boxing skills, fighting for a better future. Take a look.
It's good for us to practice this sport at this particular time because it helps us release negative energy, mental fatigue and all the exhausting aspects of our lives. Boxing unburdens us from all of that.
That's a wrap. That's all we have for you on this episode of the West Asia Post. I will see you next week with a brand new lineup, always bringing you the most recent updates, news and ground reports from the world's most volatile region. I am Redi Francis signing off. For more global news, keep on watching WION World is One.
Faster, higher, stronger. Words that mean so much on a sporting pitch every 4 years.
ओलंपिक मेडल ने मुझे ये सिखाया कि किस तरीके से अपने आप को संभालना है.
The world's best sporting talents are assembling in Paris later this month. The quest for an Olympic medal is sport's greatest pursuit.
I think people are looking at the Olympics with a lot of hope. More than 200 countries all coming together.
The Olympic Games return to the French capital after a century.
There's not really any cities that compare to it.
Catch all the build-up to the Paris Games on WION World is One.
The stress of our world can take a toll on our physical and emotional health. Here, in New York's Catskill Mountains, lies a luxurious place of healing called WION Wellness Center. The WION Wellness Center provides 500,000 square feet of natural